Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. So can you tell us a little bit about the research you have conducted in the last 5 years?
So my research has focused on state violence and more specifically on police violence. I have a manuscript that it's under review by New York University Press for a book on the experience of police violence by residents of South LA and Sao Paulo's favelas. And I also have developed a research on the deployment of tough on crime policies in the Southern Cone, particularly in Uruguay and Argentina. And I have recently published a book on an article on that. And now that we're improving the situation regarding COVID, I hope to complete that research this summer. I'll be traveling to Uruguay to complete that.
And what are some of the methods that you use during your research?
So my method is ethnography. And mostly I do ethnographic interviews. So I spend quite a lot of time in the field, getting to know the area and getting to know different actors there. And I mostly conduct interviews from an ethnographic style. So they're mostly conversations, open-ended, and in order to learn through their knowledge and their experience, how they experience state violence and how they experience police violence, and then the larger effects on what police violence, the reproduction of inequality and racism that police do systematically, both in my case studies, both in Brazil and the US.
And what are some takeaways that you want your readers to gain from all this?
So one is, which is my main focus, is how capitalism produces violence and the way the state manages that violence, and the central role police play in managing and reproducing that violence. So that's one thing that I'm interested in, and also how police violence constructs race and reproduces racism and other series of inequalities. The other big take that I'm interested in is in the way in which policing techniques travel across regions, particularly the export of US-based policing strategies and tough on crime approaches like broken windows and other similar types that move from the US into other countries or other places in the world.
And what inspires you to continue conducting your research?
So basically, I grew up during the military dictatorship in Uruguay, and I was very much involved, my family also, in the fight for human rights and the plea to bring to justice the perpetrators of human rights violations across the Americas, not only Latin America, but also the responsibility of US actors in that. So I had always an interest in state violence and how state violence operates. And later in time, I became more interested in how state violence occurs or happens in so-called democracies.
Are you hoping for policy changes in the US?
I'm not a policymaker. I haven't studied, my background is in political science, but I'm not a policymaker per se. I do think that or at least what I attempt to do is to contribute to the public discourse into these issues. I think that, I strongly believe in deep participatory democracy in which we should all contribute to the public dialogue about those things. And I hope that my research I try to translate my research to a general audience through the publications of op-eds and more news items, and hopefully to contribute to a public dialogue in order to find changes, more than policy changes, much more structural changes that can improve the conditions in which we live and can reduce violence and mostly reduce the scope of policing in our society.
Okay, thank you so much for your time, and we will be right back.
Thank you very much.